Episode 4 The Brainstorm. There once was a man named Pete. Pete loved to eat, until one day when the rain came to stay and Pete was swept off his feet. Pete was a man that wished for more. He would sit at his desk at work, swaying back and forth, just waiting for the day to end. His job was more boring than anything we have here, except for maybe Cityburg, and in this perfectly loveless life swam the thoughts of a truly bored man. Women to love, places to go, food to eat. Boy, did Pete love to eat. He blew almost every paycheck on fancy meals, brainstorming new food combinations more than any other in that ripping storm rolling around in his head. Deep-fried peanut butter and jelly, stuffed curry breads, explosive meals that burst with flavor, waiting to inject color into your life. See, there was nothing that Pete loved more than the fatty flavor of brain. It paired nicely with some sharp cheeses and hot sauces. He made a point to go gorge himself upon the fleshy flavor once a week. And every week he would drive 2 hours to the same place to obtain that which he desired. When he finally placed that succulent morsel to his lips, he grinned, all his problems collapsing within the waves of his brainstorm. This continued for as long as the boredom did. And if you've worked a desk job, you know, the boredom did. After a long while, Pete saved up enough of his money outside the weekly trips to the butcher, the odd dates he went on, never impressing a woman with his palate, and took a long trip. He sipped on martinis, rested his feet in the surf, and of course, nibbled on pork brain as he relaxed. But it was then that his planet looked up into that bright sky and saw a point. An unnatural storm filled the air and drenched Pete in cruel rain. Thunder roared overhead. He looked around. Seeing as all others were fleeing, he gave it a thought. But of course, Pete wasn't an idiot. He knew you couldn't escape that pull. That of a black hole is too strong to escape, at least for one guy. So he lived out his last moments doing something he always wanted to. Eating the brain of someone who lay dead in those sands, struck dead by lightning. He woke in a forest. Water slowly leaking in a puddle around him. Pete had been brought to the Wonderland through all that madness. But not only that, the storm that had passed over him, as he was transported here, followed. This man began to wander forward through this new world. Placed within his mind was a very special gift. You could see that storm that had followed him, it didn't. It came from him. It allowed him to externalize the great tempest within his mind, gaining furious velocity and snapping lightning across the white skies of his new environment. As Pete continued through this vast forest, he came upon a trail, splitting the center of it. He hummed a tune as he went, traipsing down this trail, one foot in front of the other. Eventually, he discovered other life. A lizard that could invert its colors purely to make it look like one of those high-contrast images. A bird that could emit the call of a great freighter. And then a person. They had dark gray skin and great sheep's horns twisting down from their woolly head. A sheep person, like none that Pete had ever seen. Her fur was damp, as everything was around Pete, and as they met, they stared at one another. It had been a very long time since Pete had seen anyone, so long that he nearly forgot how to speak. But he remembered, and he eventually spoke. As the two wanderers from different worlds began to travel with each other, they shared tales of lives they once had, superseded by this strange world. They walked, talked, but most importantly, they ate. As Pete brought the storm with them, no matter where they went, the flowers were always in bloom, the fruits were always ripe, and the grasses aplenty. The sheep woman, as Pete would find, called herself Gate, after her gift. When she asked his name, he responded, which prompted some confusion, as Pete was never a name she had heard before. What did it mean, she wondered. Though as the storm overhead only grew, Gate dubbed Pete something new, which he enjoyed. Pete was given the new name Big Weather, as all the weather that had come from his mind was quite large indeed. After traveling down the long road through the forest, into the plains, past a desert, they came upon a great gate bearing the mark of a colossal serpent. Pete, whose name we'll be using for the remainder of the story, walked up and pondered, tracing his hand over the stone. Gate followed, adjusting her yellow raincoat she picked up, to feel drier every so often, when in companionship with such a powerful storm. They had just eaten a couple deer kebabs with jam and goat cheese they found on their way here, and so they were both satisfied. Or so Gate thought. She began to work her gift to crack open the gate, twisting and churning and moving it around until its doors popped open. Gate was not ready for what was behind that door. A brilliant crashing storm encased entirely within a glass case, and at the center, a brain the size of a small room about 20 feet across. A simple rumble erupted from the belly of Pete, and when Gate tried to stop him, she found herself stunned by a sheer electrical pulse so strong it paralyzed her temporarily as she watched. Pete stepped forward, smashed the glass to this artifact, labeled the Mother Brainstorm. Gate knew exactly what was about to happen. Pete began ripping and clawing at the brain, gnashing his teeth with predatory ferocity and bloody lips as he tore into this being. 4 hours. For 4 hours that woman watched. For 4 long, grueling hours, Pete kept her there, watching. As he ate and ate and ate, his head began to swell with all this knowledge and power. Then, once all that was left of the mother brain was a small tornado and a pool of slick, slimy fluid, Pete sat there, thinking about his meal. And in this now forsaken place, with the mother storm consumed and the blood of a dead legend on the hands of a simple business worker, he relented and stood. Gate wanted to back away, but her legs were locked. And as her once good friend approached her, she almost screamed. Almost. Her shoulders felt a pressure from the man's hands, and he kissed her. Wormhole Wonderland was created, written, and produced by Win Oates, with music by Dummis and Caleb Mazzota. Visit our website down below by Webmaster Callum, and visit our Discord. Thank you for listening to Wormhole Wonderland.